Hey there, innovators. Today we are going to be making solar ovens. So using some materials that you have at home, we're going to create little insulated boxes that take and harness the power of the sun. So let's gather our materials and let's get to work. Alright, so these are all the materials we're going to need. We're going to need a cardboard box. You can use a pizza box. I'm using a packaging box. A good pair of scissors. Some tape. I have masking tape and scotch tape. A roll of tinfoil. You'll need a sharpener, some old crayons, and a cookie cutter if you want to shape your design. Innovators. So now that we've gathered our materials, we can get to work. Now you might have noticed that I'm using a small packaging box. You don't have to use that type of box. Look around your house and see what's available. Shoe boxes work really well. If you have an old pizza boxes work great because they have lids that open and close. The other thing that I'd like to note is that while I'm using tape, you can also use hot glue to secure the box and some of the tin foil that we're going to be using. So, let's gather those materials up and let's get cooking. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our box and we're going to cut it. I'm going to open up my packaging box and I made sure that I sealed the bottom with some tape. And I'm going to cut off the two smaller flaps. So just taking a pair of scissors, I'm going to carefully cut these two small flaps. If you do have an adult to help you, you can also just use a box cutter. Now make sure not to throw away these pieces of cardboard as you'll need them a little bit later. So now time to cut my second flap. Alright, and that looks good. So I'm going to take these pieces of cardboard and I'm going to set them aside. Now we're ready to start working with our box. So we're going to roll out some tinfoil and we are going to cut it into the pieces that we'll use to insulate the inside of the box. So I'm just going to cut two large sheets. And depending on the size of the box, that will really determine the size of the sheets that you cut. And here's my second one, and I think I'm ready to go. Okay, so now it's time to begin insulating the box. Now again, depending on the size of your box, you're going to need a certain amount of tin foil. I'm going to start off with my big sheets and I'm going to focus on the center of the box. I want to make sure that I'm tucking in tin foil into all of the corners. So I'm going to do this slowly, and then I will be securing the tin foil using some pieces of scotch tape. So take your time and make sure that your tin foil is covering the interior of the box. Okay, so I'm using a few more pieces of tape to secure the tin foil. That looks pretty good. I'm now going to take my second piece of tin foil and I'm going to continue to cover the interior of my box. Again, making sure to tuck the tin foil into all of the corners and using a little bit of scotch tape to secure the tin foil to the cardboard. and I'll be using tape to secure all of these seams, so a little bit of Scotch tape will do. All right, well, I'm going to put one more piece of tape there, and that looks pretty good. Now we're going to cover the sides of the cardboard box. These are the larger flaps of my packaging box. So I'll take some strips of tin foil and I'm going to cover these up. Again, it's important that these flaps are covered in tin foil all the way because they will be reflecting sunlight into the box, and they're also going to serve as insulation to keep heat inside. So make sure that you take your time covering the flaps. So I am securing the edges with a little bit of tape, and now I'm going to work on my second flap. Again, using smaller pieces to make sure that I cover all of the surface area, and I'll just fold the tin foil back. I'll be removing that extra later and securing it with some tape. So after I've covered my box in tin foil, I'll go ahead and I'll clean it up a little bit. I'll remove any extra tin foil. I'll secure all of the seams with a little bit of tape. That looks good. And on the outside of each flap, I'm going to secure it with some masking tape just to make sure that the tin foil is in place. Now, if you remember, we saved 2 pieces of cardboard. We're going to take one and we are going to cut it in half long ways. If you just have some extra cardboard, all you need to do is cut out 2 small strips. And we are going to use these to support and keep one of the lids open in our solar oven. So, first things first, at least for my design, I'm going to go ahead and close half of the box up. I'm going to use some masking tape to keep the lid closed. Now, by keeping it closed, I'm going to ensure that my box is trapping in heat. Now, depending on what kind of box you use, make sure that at least part of your box is closed, again, to make sure that heat gets trapped inside of your oven. That looks pretty good. And now to create some support in order to keep the other half of the box, the other lid, open. So on the side of the box, I'm going to use a little bit of tape and these cardboard strips to create some support. That looks pretty good there. Now, using a small strip of tape, I will secure these. You can also use a hot glue gun. So if you have access to a hot glue gun, you can just glue these pieces down. Alright, so you're going to want to do the same thing to the other side, creating one support for each side of the flap. Now, let's take a closer look at what my solar oven looks like. So, I have one of the flaps of my box is going to serve the purpose of a reflector. So as light hits my box, sunlight hits my box, it's going to be reflected back into my box. So regardless of what type of box you're using, make sure that you have a reflector that allows sunlight to go into your box. One last look. All right, now we can start preparing our crayon shavings. And now for our crayon shavings. The reason we want to use shavings is the smaller the Crayola pieces are. I'm just taking some old crayons I have. I'm taking off any of the paper that's still on them, and I'm going to gently shave them in my sharpener. Again, the reason you want to use shavings is because they're small pieces and they're going to melt a lot faster. So, hopefully your crayon box has a sharpener, or you can just use an old sharpener and create some shavings. You can also chop up the crayons, or you can even use an old cheese shredder. Alright, that looks pretty good. And let's take a closer look. Perfect. Now it's time to use the crayon shavings. So we'll be using our solar oven to create a crayon mold. So we're going to take another piece of tinfoil and we'll just fold it in half. This will essentially be your baking tray. You will then take your cookie cutter if you're using one. I'm using a metal cookie cutter. And you'll be pouring your shavings into the cookie cutter. That way, as the crayons melt, they'll take on the form of your cookie cutter. Otherwise, you can simply just sprinkle your crayon shavings all over your small piece of tin foil, and you can make an abstract work of art or just a really cool pattern or design. Alright, so now my cookie cutter seems pretty filled. I'm going to take this and I am going to gently load it into our solar oven. So let me grab that. And I'm going to gently tuck it in to the solar oven without spilling any of the crayon bits. And I will partially tuck it under one of the flaps. Position that, and as you can see, the reflector is going to reflect sun onto my mold. Now, I'm going to use a piece of saran wrap. Now, this is not necessary to complete the project, but it will help insulate heat in your solar oven. So, if you have some plastic wrap, you can create a layer that's going to cover the opening of your solar oven. What this will do is this will help to trap heat inside. So I'm going to take some Scotch tape and I'm going to secure my piece of saran wrap. Again, the better job you do at sealing your opening with saran wrap, the more heat you capture. So take your time. And after this, we will be able to test it. That looks pretty good to me. Our solar oven is now ready to be put to the test. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to find a nice sunny spot outside, and we're going to leave our solar oven to do its thing. So let's see, I want full sunlight. I will probably put it out on my work table. Direct sunlight, and you're going to place it there for a couple of hours.
Now, innovators, the way that our solar ovens work is that they capture light particles given off by the sun, called photons. The tinfoil reflectors bounce the light into the box, and because we've done such a great job covering the inside with tinfoil, we've created an insulated box that's going to trap those photons and create heat. Now, with my project, I used a little bit of saran wrap to really seal my oven tight. This is really important. The saran wrap allows the light to go inside, and it traps the heat, not allowing it to bounce out. What it's doing is the greenhouse effect. So just like your car, when you leave it out in a hot parking lot with all the windows rolled up, that heat that's collected inside of your car is not able to escape. So our solar boxes work in a really similar fashion. Now, if you don't have some saran wrap, you can always leave your solar oven out exposed, but you may have to leave it out a little bit longer because some of that heat is going to escape. So this is a great opportunity to use some design thinking and to experiment to see what types of results work best.
Now, let's check on our solar oven. We've had it out for about an hour, and it seems like our crayons melted. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to make sure that my solar oven is not too hot, and I'm going to slowly open it up. I'm going to remove my mold, which looks good, and I'm going to set it off to the side somewhere cool so that the crayons can harden and cool off. Hardening the mold.
Innovators, excellent work today. Now, we used our solar ovens to create these awesome crayon shapes. I was able to pop mine out of my cookie cutter, and this is the cool shape that I got. Now, you don't have to use your solar ovens just for crayons. One of the cool things is that you can actually put food in there. And if you leave it out, now make sure remember you're leaving something out in the sun, so make sure it doesn't spoil. But you can try making s'mores. You can put a piece of chocolate, graham cracker, and a marshmallow in there and see what results you get. So try different things out and see what happens. So thanks for watching the video. And remember to always think creatively and think critically. Make sure to catch the next one. Take care.